Welcome to the What to Read Next podcast. This podcast is hosted by Laura Amin, a voracious reader of romance and young adult novels. In this podcast, Laura interviews fellow readers and authors and asks them for book recommendations of what we should read next. We hope you enjoy it. Welcome to the What to Read Next podcast. So happy to have you back. Before we get to this book recommendation, I want to recommend a fantasy meets family drama with magical realism book that is Deepest Blue by Mindy Cecchini. Here's the synopsis of the book. Brigida meets Pippin to recount a quirky tale of grief steeped in Italian folklore. A tale that reminds the reader, remember what helps, forget what hurts, give what remains permission to soar. In Panduri, an enchanted city seen only at twilight, everyone's path is mapped, everyone's destiny is decided, and their lives are charted at birth and steer an unwavering star. Everyone has his place, and Matteo, son of Pandura's Duca, is eager to take his place as legendary protector, at the border and out from under his father's domineering thumb. Until Matteo's older brother pulls ranks and heads to the border in Matteo's steed, leaving Pandura's orbit in spiral, and Matteo's course on a skid. Forced to follow an unexpected path, resentful and raw, Matteo is determined to rise to pursue the one future Pandura's star can never chart, a life of his own. This seems like an interesting book. I'm looking forward to reading it, so I hope you actually pick it up. I'm going to have Mindy coming into the show in January, so hopefully you'll get to enjoy this recording. That will be looking forward to it. So now let's get to today's book recommendation with Nicole and Gayle from Readerly Report podcast. Hi, Gayle and Nicole. Welcome to What to Read Next podcast.
Hi, Laura.
Hi, Laura.
So happy to have you here. So tell us who you are. Why don't we start with Nicole?
I'm Nicole Bonia. I've been blogging probably for the last, I don't know how long, 8 years. And then I started this podcast called The Readerly Report in 2016 with Gayle.
I love it. And how about you, Gayle?
So I'm Gayle Weiswasser, and I started my book blog, Every Day I Write the Book, in 2006. So it's been, I can't believe it, 12 years already of book blogging. And Nicole and I met many years ago through book blogging and became kind of BEA buddies. And as she mentioned, we launched our podcast about 2 years ago, and we've been going strong ever since.
I love it. So let's talk about the Readerly Report. What inspired you to get started?
So we started the Readerly Report probably in the summer of 2016. I think our first episode was taking a look at all of the hyped summer books and deciding whether they were worthy or not.
Yeah, it's funny. We actually started it as more of a publication. And Nicole, you were visiting DC, and we had gone out to dinner. And we both liked podcasting a lot. And Nicole had hosted what was sort of, it actually was a podcast in the early days of podcasting on Blog Talk Radio. And we both were like, why don't we do a podcast? That sounds like a good fit for us. And so we morphed the publication over into a podcast.
I love it. I've been a listener since the summer. It's been quite a few book recommendations, so I enjoy it a lot.
Oh, great.
So how do you come up with show topics?
I think it depends just mainly on, we try to do something once a month or, like once every month to 6 weeks about what are the new books that are coming out that we're looking forward to. If we can update our readers on anything that we've already read or, what are just the really hot books that we have our eye on. And usually about the same interval, so we'll have shows quarterly on books that are coming out in paperback that we have read and we can recommend. And then I think we sort of just fill in on the season. Both Gayle and I travel a lot, so we do quite a bit of podcasts on what books you should take when you're traveling or on vacation. And if we can make it topical, we can. Recently, I forced Gayle to do like a scary book one, even though she's really not a scary book person. But she did her best.
That's awesome. So what has been your biggest aha moment from starting a podcast?
I think for me, it's that I have come to realize that when Nicole and I are at our least scripted, I wouldn't say, maybe scripted is the wrong word because it's not like we ever script any of this. I think it's when we sort of veer off into a rant or something that is, maybe not on topic. that those seem to be kind of the most interesting parts of the podcast sometimes. Like, I don't know, we'll get to something that was unplanned, or, maybe we'll disagree about something, or we'll talk about something just unexpected. That is, I think that's what people like to hear. I know that's what I like to hear when I'm listening to a podcast. If it feels too formulaic, it can get a little, I don't know, you can kind of get a little distracted. But when people get real, remember that old tagline from The Real World? It was like, when people stop being polite and start getting real. I think when we do that on the show, that's when it's at its best.
Yes, I love it.
And it's kind of fun. We have those moments because we know each other's, following each other's tastes and lives, I guess, over the last 8 years, we sort of have that fodder and know what's going on. Like when I tell Gayle she needs to purge some books. And how she needs to go about that. Or we both, we have some podcasts sometimes where we just really don't like anything that we're reading.
Right. Or Nicole, when I tell you that sometimes Nicole judges books on like before she's read them, because like if something totally random, like the person who was passing them out at BEA or something. And so I have to talk Nicole out of her snap judgments.
I love it. That's awesome. So let's talk about your reading life. When do you guys get to read?
Well, I have 3 kids and a full-time job, and I just moved, and so life is crazy and busy, and I find that finding time to read can be really challenging. So for me, I'm always cramming it in around the edges, like late at night, or when I'm blow drying my hair. Sometimes I walk my dog with a book in my hand. So it's always like stolen moments. And then when I travel, I can get a lot of reading in. So if I'm traveling for work or if I'm on vacation, then those for me are big catch-up times when I can cram in a bunch of books. But that's for me, my ever-present challenge with book blogging is just not having enough time to read.
Yeah. How about you, Nicole?
I read, well, basically I try to make time to read. My schedule it's flexible in the sense that I do not have to go into the same office every day with a desk job. It can be a little bit inflexible because a lot of my work is appointment based, so I am sort of on the run. So I do try to get up early in the morning and just sort of get my life together a little and look at my calendar and make myself a cup of tea, and then I try to settle in with a book for about an hour before I have to, start making plans and getting out into the world. Mm-hmm. And then I do a lot of my reading, like when I'm commuting place to place, if I'm in an Uber or on the subway, or sometimes if I'm walking around town, I'll listen to an audiobook, and then I try to get some reading in the evenings. Saturday morning in particular seems to be like a really good time for me because I'm a naturally early riser, and a lot of times Saturday morning, if there's something that I'm really interested in, want to read, I can get up in the morning, and if it's really, really good, sometimes I'll knock out a book before I have to run off to brunch or something.
That's a really good time. I understand that. I actually can feel the vibe of Saturday mornings to be a good reading vibe.
Yeah, because, if I don't have any kids in the house, so if you don't have those kinds of restrictions, not a lot of people are up in the city yet.
Yeah. Yeah, the city doesn't start over until, I think, 12 o'clock. I think that's when things start to come alive.
Yeah, and if you're like me and you wake up at 6:30, if 7 o'clock is sleeping in for you, then I've got a good 4, 5, 6 solid hours before I have to do anything.
That's awesome. So let's talk about reading. What do you love most about reading?
For me, reading is the ultimate relaxation and escape. Like if I've had a really crazy day or lots of things are going on in my family or at work or something, to me, reading is the one time of the day that I'm not multitasking, that I'm not, got a million things going through my head. I can really focus, and, my body is relaxed. My mind is centered and focused. And I just love the escape of it. And I love, whether I'm reading fiction or nonfiction for me, it doesn't have to be escapist in the topic of what I'm reading. It's just that I find the discipline of reading to me is escape.
How about you, Nicole?
I think the same thing. I mean, I feel like it's an escape, but I also read because I'm just curious about how people do things, whether it's because they're married or if they're from another culture, or I'm just interested in all kinds of different thought processes, which I think that's why I tend to read so much from just all different kinds of things. Like I'll read YA books, and I love narrative nonfiction. I love literary fiction, historical fiction. I think there is just a curiosity for me. Like before I do things, I'd like to know what it might be like. You know, even though I want to limit preconceived notions, I just like reading about things.
So what would you like your reading life to be different if you have a magic wand?
I would love to read faster.
More time.
More time, and I'd love to read faster. Yeah, I'm a slow reader. Nicole is really fast, and I am very slow. So I have the bad combination of not a lot of time, and I'm really slow. So I would fix both of those things.
She says that. I don't know that I think I cram in moments all the time, constantly. Yeah. And maybe a little bit fast.
You're definitely fast, yeah.
How would it be different? Yeah, more time for me. I mean, I get into these conversations with myself, you know, the philosophical conversations about why do I read or why do I enjoy reading and what does reading contribute? And it just contributes so much pleasure to me that I would like more time, which is crazy because I spend a lot of time reading.
I understand. So I understand the pain. I just want to have more time to read. It's all good. So how do you choose your next read? Do you keep a TBR or are you a mood reader? How does that process go about?
I'm the ultimate mood reader. I do not keep a TBR. I mean, I have a gazillion things on the TBR, but I don't order them other than, you know, if I've got like a library book that's due or a book club. Other than that, it's like where the winds take me after the last book. So a lot of times it's dependent on what I just read. Maybe it's sending me in a particular direction because I want something different. So I usually don't decide that until I have finished the book I'm currently reading.
Gotcha.
I think Nicole is a lot more deliberate.
I am. I feel like I don't have a hard and fast TBR. Some of my reading is dictated by, you know, I tend to like see people if they're reading something, and if it's something that I know that I want to read, I will bump it up the pile and then we can discuss it next time we see each other. 3 or 4 of the books I read every month are probably dictated by some kind of book talk or book discussion or book club or something like that. Lately, I have been pulling out a bunch of books because I feel like I constantly am looking up what books are coming out, and there's always like 5 books a week coming out that I want to read, and I don't read that fast. So part of being more deliberate is just about making sure that I'm keeping track of things that I said I really want to read, whether it's just like putting them, you know, like on one shelf and sort of just checking in with them each month and maybe switching some of them up. You know, it's not like, oh my God, I have to read these books, but I do have a good, I'd say 12 to 16 books that I pull aside and say, you know, it would be nice if I could get to some of these, you know, if my mood or whatever allows. So it's a loose TBR.
Okay. I love it. We got a movie, we got a loose TBR. I like it. So how do you keep track of the books you read? Do you keep track of them, or if you so, how?
For me, I keep track of them on my blog. That's the purpose of my blog. So every book I read, I review. They're all listed there. I usually review them on Goodreads too. But definitely Goodreads is not as complete as my blog is. So for me, it's a reading journal.
I love it.
For years, I had a blog. I don't think I have ever reviewed everything I've read because it would just be too much. Just depending on the year, I usually read at least 100 books a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I just find that I really didn't want to spend a lot of time going over why I don't like things as much. So lately, I think the podcast has been, you hear a lot of what I talk about. I do maintain a comprehensive list of everything I've read on Goodreads. Like I don't really rate or review them, but that list is there, and that's how I am deciding what I'm going to be talking about on the podcast and just keeping track of what I've read. And I started to do that on paper. I think I'm going to be switching to that on paper because I'm easily distracted. I find Goodreads really distracting. So when I get on there to log books, I can go down a rabbit hole for quite a while.
Yeah, I keep track on Goodreads just because of the books that I'm reading and what I read, but I don't keep a TBR on Goodreads because I go down the rabbit hole and I'm like, I just will never get out of it. So I understand.
Yeah, and every couple of years I delete my TBR on Goodreads because I do have what I'm looking forward to reading on Goodreads, but then it gets to like 700 books long and it's ridiculous. So every couple of years I start over.
I like it. I like the idea of starting over. That seems like that just makes it much more manageable again.
Right.
So, Nicole, you mentioned your go-to genres, but how about you, Gayle? What are some of your go-to genres?
For me, it's literary fiction, memoir, I guess women's fiction, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
She has a palette. She likes palette cleansers every now and then.
Yes, I do like palette cleansers. But I think probably my sweet spot is literary fiction.
I love it. So we're going to talk about your favorite books of all time. So how about, Gayle, what are your top 3 favorite books of all time?
Oh, that is such a hard question because it's really hard to narrow them down. I have, the like Hall of Famers like Pride and Prejudice and Lolita, but I think I'm not going to mention those. So for me, I would say 3 of my favorites are Atonement by Anne McEwen, which I just thought was a perfect book. A book called Evening by Susan Minot, which was, I read it years and years ago, but it still stays with me. It's a book about a woman looking back on her life. She's dying and she's looking back on her youth and her marriages. And it's like one of those impressionistic books. It's not linear. It's just, memories and sort of flashes of detail. I don't know. I just thought it was beautifully written. Mm-hmm. And then in recent years, and Nicole's going to roll her eyes because I do bring this up on like every show, but since you asked, my favorite books, my favorite book of the last 2 years is called Kitchens of the Great Midwest by J. Ryan Straddle, which is just a book that I adored. And it's one of the only books I've reread in the last 10 years because I liked it so much. So those are probably all literary fiction. And those are kind of up my alley, I guess you would say.
I love it. How about you, Nicole?
Okay. So Pride and Prejudice is on my list as well. Okay. It is a staple. I've reread it many times, and I've had different feelings about it each time I read it. I do feel like that is a perfect book. I really like this book called Kindred by Octavia Butler. Mm-hmm. It's set in the 1970s, but it really could be set in this moment, and it's about this interracial couple where it's a Black woman and white man. And she, all of a sudden, it's sort of like time travel. She gets pulled into the past, like in 1850s. I want to say it's like Mississippi or Alabama to save the life of this white child who's going to grow up to be, I guess, the progenitor of her line. So if she doesn't save his life, then she won't exist later on, but he's just sort of an awful person. So it's like about this modern woman who's just navigating, I guess, the perils of slavery in order to exist. So sort of convoluted, very interesting story. My last pick is narrative nonfiction. It's this book called Destiny of the Republic by Candace Millard. It's about James Garfield, which is just so odd because it's about one of the lesser known presidents who was assassinated. But his death just coincides with, it's just this interesting history of the mental health of the man who tried to assassinate him. And it intersects with science and Joseph Lister and like the development of germ theory. And it's just really fascinating. And it's so good. It's like narrative nonfiction at its best. It's like a story. It's such a story that it's like one of my go-to recommendations. Like I can recommend this book to anyone and I just feel confident that they'll read it. I've been trying to get Gayle to read it, but no luck yet.
So good. I think I might pick it up. It seems like an interesting book to pick.
It's so good.
Okay. So who are your go-to authors, or which authors are you auto by?
Oh, I have a lot of those.
Okay.
I would say Jennifer Haig, Curtis Sittenfeld, that is an auto buy. Jane Smiley, she hasn't had anything out recently, I don't think, ever since the trilogy. Meg Wolitzer has probably made her way on that list. Lionel Shriver, I will usually take a look at. And then a new one for me is Taylor Jenkins Reid. I've read a couple of her books this year and have gotten kind of into her too. I know she's very popular right now, but I can understand why.
Yeah, I read, I have pretty much all her books. I read pretty much 3 or 4 of her books, and I really enjoy her.
Oh, good. Which ones have you read?
Daisy Jones, Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, One True Loves, and After I Do.
Oh, okay.
What's your favorite of hers?
Yeah, of those 4.
Seven Husbands.
Which one?
Seven Husbands.
Oh, Seven Husbands. Okay, so I'm reading that right now.
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
Okay, and I have that one.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a good one. It was my first foray with historical fiction, and it was actually a good one. So
cool.
I
Okay,
think I'm
that's
going to
good.
really like her. I have her latest book. I haven't read any of her books, but I have Daisy Jones and the Six, and I just read the first chapter, and I really like it.
yeah,
Oh, good.
Daisy Jones reads like a Rolling Stone magazine. You know, it reads like kind of like a whole sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And it's just like an interview format, which was interesting. But I really enjoy it. And I read her short story,
Oh, I read that too. Yeah.
And she mentioned Daisy Jones makes a cameo, which was kind of cool. I was like, oh, there's Daisy Jones there.
Yep.
So, that's awesome. How about you, Nicole? Who are your go-to authors?
I really like John Boyne. He wrote a book called The Absolutist. Unlike most World War books, this one was set in World War I, and it's just so beautifully written and so devastating. I'm reading his The Heart's Invisible series right now, and he is just such a great writer. So I definitely think I'm going to pick up anything that he writes. Tayari Jones, I really love her. She wrote Silver Sparrow. She wrote An American Marriage that I'm, happy is getting so much acclaim because I just think that she writes about real people with just such a nuanced eye, and her stories, she just completely envelops you in whose ever point of view she's expressing at the time. And I always think that's just so fascinating when an author can just have you thinking wildly different things and rooting for different people within the space of, 350, 400 pages. I really loved Candace Millard's Destiny of the Republic. So I'm always looking. She tends to write about statesmen, like presidents. She has a book about Winston Churchill. I think she has one about Teddy Roosevelt. But her synthesis of facts and history and just bringing them all together to just give you a compelling story that's going to make it read like the biggest, I don't know, like just the most suspenseful thing you'll ever read. Anything that she writes, I'm going to want to investigate.
I love it.
There's a million more, but
That's a good healthy list of authors. So, favorite books that you read in 2018 so far?
I would put American Marriage on my list too. I thought that was great for all the reasons that Nicole just said. I have read the two Taylor Jenkins Reid's book that I really liked this year. So that was After I Do and One True Loves. And then I'm going to put this random book on there that I just read. And it's funny because it's a lot lighter, or I don't know, maybe not as literary as some of the books I usually read. But I just finished One Day in December by Josie Silver. And this was one I just could not put down. And I just really enjoyed it. It was very entertaining and very satisfying book. So I'm going to bump that one up the list for 2018.
That's actually one of my TBR, so I'm glad to hear that. Yeah. How about you, Nicole?
My gosh, I have so many. Like, I don't even know what to say. I really love The Incendiaries by Aro Kwan. The Great Believers by Rebecca Mackay is getting a lot of buzz, and it's awesome. What else would I say? I really like The Clockmaker's Daughter. It was one of those books that had it's a really slow build up, and it's just one of those books, I guess, that's probably quintessentially me. It's set in England. It's about some old haunted house that has lots of history. So there is a big commitment in getting to know the characters initially, but the way it all comes together, it is just it's such a beautiful book. And then I also love There by Tommy Orange and The Caregiver by Samuel Park.
I love it. So I read The Incendiaries and I hated it. So it's one of those books that's
I felt like it was definitely an investment. You know, like when I was first reading that book, I had no idea what was going on. And then as it unfolded, I was really into it.
Yeah. I found it problematic in certain areas. I was like, okay. And I powered through. It was one book that I should not finish. But because it was so short, I was like, I'm just going to finish this book. It'll count as my book count. But
I can get like that. Yeah. When it's just, when you know that you're not enjoying something, but you're just like, oh, I just need to get through 100 more pages.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So what's for your most anticipated new release for 2018 or 2019 that you're looking forward?
Well, for me, it's the big blockbuster coming out tomorrow, which is the Michelle Obama memoir. I'm looking forward to that one. And then for me, the other one is Daisy Jones, which I know is we all have that now, but it's not coming out till, is it January or spring sometime? March. Okay. So for me, that's one of the ones I'm really looking forward to for next year.
Love it. How about you, Nicole?
I am really looking forward to, I have liked Sarah Jessica Parker's book picks. Like I've liked the book club books that she picked for the ALA, and I really enjoyed, it was a little bit too long, but I did enjoy the debut novel that she had on her imprint. What was the name of that book again, Gayle?
It's
A Place for Us, yeah.
Yeah, A Place for Us, yeah. I'm sitting in, I'm like looking at it. It's on the shelf, and I can't come up with the name of it.
So there is a book called Golden Child that's going to be coming out on her imprint in January. It's by Claire Adam, and it is about these two sons. It's set in Trinidad, and one of them is kidnapped. And I'm really looking forward to reading this. Yeah, and I think he's like the difficult son who's kidnapped. He's like not an easy child to raise. But then when he goes missing, and then there's this other book that looks super interesting. It's called At the Wolf's Table by Rosella Postorino. It's coming out in February, and it is about these women who, like, it was these 12 women who had to live together, and I think they were basically testers. Like, they had to taste all of the food that Hitler ate.
That sounds like an interesting book.
Yeah, it looks really good. Like, I read the first chapter, and the writing's really good, so I'm looking forward to getting into that one. It's actually one of the books that I had to pull out and remind myself, and it's sort of on my loose November TBR.
I love it. So what's one book that everyone loves where you cannot stand?
Little Bee by Chris Cleave.
Ooh, that's the best answer.
Gosh, I hated that book.
I hated that book so much.
And everyone loved it so much. That was just super annoying. I probably didn't hate it as much as, if it was just sort of like, just average, but it was so hyped and he was everywhere and it was such a big book and everyone loved it. And I was like, what's wrong with you people?
Oh, I totally agree. Little Bee, that was the worst. I
think we hated on it together.
I know we did. I will never read another book by Chris Cleave. For me, I have a few of them. I can't stand anything by Maria Semple. So okay. I did not like Bernadette, and I think I've read at least one other book by her. And again, that's another author I'm never going to pick up again. I couldn't stand Where'd You Go, Bernadette? And I didn't like Little Fires Everywhere. I know that was a huge hit last year, and I thought it was really disappointing. And there's another book that I hated too, that Nicole's heard me rant about this one before.
Carousel Court?
No. I mean, that book, I feel like no one even knows about that book. The Hotel in the Corner of Bitter and Sweet. Hated that book.
Oh, yeah. Jamie Ford.
Yeah, I couldn't stand it.
Good luck getting Gayle to stand in his BA line.
Oh, my God. All I remember is that I wrote a review of it, and it was so scathing. And then he tweeted it out. And I was like, dude, did you actually read the review? Like, why?
It did you no favors.
All right. I was like, why are you tweeting this? Yeah. Oh, man, I hated that book.
Oh, my gosh. So what's your favorite book to movie adaptation? Or what book do you think should be adapted?
Nicole, I wonder if you and I have the same one for this one.
Oh, I doubt it. Shutter Island was mine.
Oh, yeah, that's not mine. I don't even know what that is.
Have you even read Shutter? It's this book by Dennis Lehane about this FBI agent or this U.S. Marshal who with his partner goes out to investigate an escaped prisoner on this island. It's such a mind twister. And I think it's pretty representative of the book.
Who's in it?
Leonardo DiCaprio and Mark Ruffalo.
Oh, that's a good cast.
Yeah. What was yours?
Well, I have a few. So mine, I love the Keira Knightley Pride and Prejudice. Mm-hmm. I thought that was really good. I'm probably alone in this one, but I actually really like the adaptation of The Time Traveler's Wife with Rachel McAdams in it. I love that book, and I thought the movie was good. Although I don't think most people did. And I also liked Atonement, which was adapted, had Saoirse Ronan in it, and that is also one of my favorite books, and I thought they did a good job with it.
I really liked the movie. I really liked Atonement. I have not read the book, but I really did like the movie, and will still probably read the book.
I would love to hear what you think of the book, Nicole. I think you would like it.
Yeah, Ian McEwan was a hard one for me because I tried to read Saturday and could not do it. And there was another one of his that I tried.
Chesil Beach?
Talking to people who really liked, no, that one's really short. I might read that one soon.
That one's good.
But yeah, a lot of people said that Saturday was really hard to get into.
Yeah, I thought Atonement was way better than Saturday.
Okay.
So we got a book recommendation there. So what are the book recommendations that you share with others that they should pick up?
I think I jumped the gun and told you mine. Like I make everyone read Destiny of the Republic. I campaign. It took me 4 years to get one of my friends to read this book, and then he loved it. It's like, I told you.
That's awesome. I gave mine away too. And Nicole, cover your ears. It's Kitchens of the Great Midwest. I recommend that to everybody. And I would say of all of the people I've recommended it to, one person didn't like it. Everyone else has come back and said, oh, this was so great. I loved it. So whenever someone's going anywhere, they need a gift or they do anything, I'm like, go get Kitchens of the Great Midwest. It's the best. Have you read that one?
No, I'm actually curious. I may buy it. You're raving about it.
I love it.
Both
I
of
love
the
it so
books
much.
that you rave about it, I may buy that.
Oh, good.
I love it. So tell us where you can find you online.
At thereaderlyreport.com, where you can subscribe to our newsletter to get updates on our podcast. The podcast is The Readerly Report, and it's also The Readerly Report on Instagram.
And we also have a Facebook group called the Readerly Report Readers. So if you find that on Facebook, just click on the request. I don't know what it says, request to join, and we'll go ahead and approve that. So we've got a lot of discussion happening at Readerly Report Readers.
I love it.
And I also can be found at my blog, which is everydayIwritethebookblog.com.
And I can be found at NicoleBonia.com or Nicole Bonia on Instagram.
I love it. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having us. This
Laura.
was great.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Nicole and Gayle, for great book recommendations. For a detailed list of books mentioned in this podcast, please visit whattoreadnextblog.com/76. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider leaving a review on iTunes. This will help the podcast get discovered by new audiences. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you soon.